Harris had an open invitation to sit down with Joe Rogan. She declined that offer. It royally fucked her over. And that's not because of who Joe Rogan is as a person or a podcaster. It was because she failed to penetrate the right-wing media machine. If you're one of the, oh my God, how could this have happened? People after this election, I promise you this video is going to give you a lot of clarity. The first thing we absolutely have to understand is what the fuck is the right-wing media machine? The only context you need is going back to 2018. Steve Bannon, who is the architect of all of the shit you're about to see in my mind, said something that I'll never forget in my life that is key to understanding all of this. He said his goal with media was to flood the zone with shit. And that's exactly what he did. Come see the flood for yourself. So we've got our 5 buckets of traditional and non-traditional media. We have broadcast, podcast, tour, yes, like concert extravaganza, radio, and religion. All of these things, this is key, feed into one person. They all feed to and take directives from one man, that is Donald Trump. We have to start with broadcast because this was the real OG, has been around and being built specifically for this moment. Rupert Murdoch, shout out. You've got Fox News, that is the OG. But a lot of this world has moved away from them, and we'll get back to that in a second. Then you have the newer kids on the block. You have Newsmax, OANN, One American News Network, I believe, is the actual initials. And Sinclair Broadcasting, which is this kind of dark, suspicious group of people that bought up local TV stations by the hundreds, and they all regurgitate the same kind of conservative talking points. It's really, really weird. Second, and honestly, I'll go out on a limb and say most important to me, podcasters. We've got groups and individuals. But if we're being real here, these are all one big group. They fraternize together, they make content together, they promote each other's content. It is all a self-sustainable ecosystem of oftentimes low-quality information or deliberately misleading information. So you got the Daily Caller and the Daily Wire. This is not, all-inclusive. This is not an all-inclusive resort, by the way. We're missing some people, but these are like the key players you should know. Under the Daily Wire, you have 2 of the biggest names, Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, you're definitely all familiar with. He is, a staple, has been a stalwart of this, despite the fact that he was a never-Trumper in 2016, said he would never vote for that man. But how far they come, it's really crazy. Individuals now. This is where it's gotten interesting. A lot of people have, ventured off in their own direction, separated from the conservative organizations that they were brought up in, and they're getting millions upon millions upon millions of views. Like when I tell you Patrick Bet David, PBD, the way I had never heard of this man until election night, when an article was written, he had Candace Owens on his stream on YouTube. 5 million people were watching that stream. The important thing, though, is that these people make and break news. But in addition to that, they also start a lot of rumors. They like to ruffle people's feathers. This is that troll engagement activity we've all seen. An offshoot of this that I would be remiss to not discuss, even though I really don't want to, are the Groypers. J.D. Vance is known to dip a toe in the Groyper pond. This is a group of people who follow a guy named Nick Fuentes. If you don't know who Nick Fuentes is, I recommend not looking him up on the internet because your algorithm is going to go super wackadoodle after that. But he is basically homophobic, transphobic, anti-Semitic, just racist. The list really goes on and on. He's the one you probably saw after the election said, "Your body, my choice," which is scary in a lot of ways. Now, I'm not really going to go into like the manosphere of all of this today. The Andrew Tates of the world. It's just a different project, but it's important to leave them here because the more people interact with all of these people, the more they're going to get closer to interacting with this group of people. And that's bad. These are kind of a little adjacent, but Tor, I think, is absolutely essential to mention because these people are organizing caravans, which is one of their favorite words. And that, like the helm of it, is Turning Point USA, started by Charlie Kirk, who has one of the top 5 podcasts in the country and loves to go and argue with students on college campuses constantly. He is running one of the biggest organizations in all of politics, not just right-wing politics, and their motion around the nation is really giving IRL community a new name in the political world. Over to radio, these are kind of Fox News rejects. I hate to say, Megyn Kelly left Fox News. Bill O'Reilly left Fox News. But do you know how many millions of people in this country listen to the radio? Like, I know us as young people, we don't think about that ever. It never crosses my mind. Millions and millions of people are listening to radio and conservative radio on a daily basis, getting exposed to this type of information. Beyond that, we have religion. There's a lot of Trump worship going on in church, despite the fact that, I'm pretty sure the Bible says don't worship any false idols. I think they're going to figure that out at some point, maybe later rather than sooner. That's a whole other video, but they're an essential part of all feeding back to this man at the top. So this group of people created the infrastructure. They've been investing in this for absolute years, waiting for this moment. But it is this next group of people that brought the message to new audiences, and that's what took Donald Trump over the top. And they got their thanks on election night.
I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelt Boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
So satisfying. Now, this is the non-political media that got a hell of a lot more political right before Election Day. The key players here, obviously Joe Rogan. That's why we're here talking about this. He came through with the Trump and Elon interviews right in that period before the election, exposed to millions and millions and millions of viewers. So he did his part. The rest of these are mostly streamers. Obviously, Dave Portnoy is a little bit of a side character in this mission. My prediction about him in the Barstool Conservatives, though, I'm one to say when I'm wrong. I was so fucking wrong. So he definitely belongs on this list with the rest of them. And you can start to understand why these guys don't necessarily operate in this world. They talk about things that are not political. They do pranks. They make jokes.
Kim Kardashian.
Disingenuous.
They promote products. They aren't specifically politically minded people, but whether they like it or not, they are now right-wing by association forever in a lot of the minds of America. Maybe not mine, but at least for the time being. This is where I'll try to keep my cool. This is the section that really grinds my gears more than anything else. We've got Elon Musk, and he went ahead and bought X, named it, I will always call it Twitter, and that disrupted the information sphere in ways that I don't think we fully understand yet and are going to have to contend with for years and years and years. The All In podcast is one thing, but the key person under Elon Musk, which is who connects us to this entire side of the board, which is why you cannot argue that these two things are separate, is... For those of you who are having a hard time reading that, it says Tucker Carlson. And the essential element here is that he comes from Fox News. He left that to start a new media empire where he is getting X amount, X no pun intended, of views on X. And he is the connecting force, the connective tissue, the ligaments, the joints between all of these people and the information sphere that won this election. And finally, the very vacuous, quiet liberal media. As you can see, there's a lot less going on here. And I wanted to do this to illustrate the visual difference between how crowded and populated the right-wing media is versus the left-wing media. Let me just say again, this is not an exhaustive list. We've got Obama clingers, never Trumpers, the new left, which we'll talk about, and influencers. These are wide buckets, obviously. Well, those two are wide and these are kind of specific, but these are the dominant trends that have emerged since the 2020 election, in my view. Starting with the Obama clingers, respectfully, they're just not letting go of a dream that is long gone. That is MSNBC and Pod Save America. The really interesting thing, though, is just because they're Obama clingers doesn't mean that they have an open door to interact with Democrats in office. Neither Kamala Harris nor Tim Walz, I found this out yesterday, ever came on a Pod Save America or Joe Biden in the lead up to the election. There is a very different approach to access when it comes to the Democratic Party, which is going to be, in my conclusion, big time here. The never Trumpers. These are people who by and large worked in the Bush administrations and have fully renounced Trump, said I would never vote for him. I cannot support this, and have largely left the party for the most part. That's going to be like the Lincoln Project, which was like the hit of 2016 to 2020 to 2022 has kind of, dissipated. The Bulwark is another group of never Trumpers. They've actually started to have a pickup on YouTube. Shout out Tim Miller. He's really doing the work over there. But this is largely serving a population that is not the foundation of social media and who should be the foundation that's being catered to in political campaigns. And this is where the streamers really start to show up. You've got Hassan, who drew, I think, 7 million views on election night on his stream. Destiny, who's like his mortal enemy. You've got a fun little hatred going on over there. Brian Tyler Cohen is the name that I hear most when I ask people what their news source is. He is, to me, the biggest and strongest oppositional force to the right-wing media machine when it comes to YouTube. Lastly, the influencers. Again, not an exhaustive list. Harry Sisson, I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, all over my TikTok feed. Listen, I scroll past every video. Godspeed and kudos to him. He's a staple of, you know, what your mom is hoping for the Democratic Party. What your mom who watches MSNBC is hoping for the Democratic Party is him. Matt Bernstein, who does a ton of work in the queer space, educating about LGBTQ issues. He's really popular on Instagram. And lastly, oh, I put 3 arrows there. It's supposed to be one thing. This is how my brain is working. Faceless infographic accounts. After 2020, the Democrats went buck fucking wild on faceless Instagram infographics. Everybody was sharing them to their story. But I think they've stagnated a lot in their popularity because people are craving a face to the name. I think there's a mismatch between what a heavy hitter in the liberal media bubble looks like versus the millions and millions and millions of daily views, 24 hours a day views and content that are going on the right. One of the things that's kind of had me lose sleep over this when I've been thinking about it over the past week is, who did these people report to? Who is the leader of all of these different people? Who do they align under the way that the right side aligned over Trump? The answer is a big fat no one. There is no consensus among the Democratic Party of who is the leader, who do they take direction from. This is going to be a big problem for them. When the left started to contend with this in the aftermath of the 2024 election results, everybody lost their minds on the internet and were like, we need to build a Joe Rogan. We have to build our own Joe Rogan today. And they were fucking panicking. The number one issue with that to me, and this is a big compliment I'm about to pay to Mr. Joe Rogan, he's not a replicable figure. He is one of one in many ways, but that's not the important factor that Democrats are missing here. You cannot replicate him because he does not have a consistent ideology. And if there is one thing that Democrats have married themselves to in the past decade, it's making sure that their ideology is consistent, never faltering. There are no loopholes. You cannot punch through it. And that is completely unaligned with a figure like Joe Rogan, who makes his opinions and judgments and comes to his conclusions seemingly on a whim by how he's feeling that day. That's why he sits down and has conversations with these figures, so he can judge their character and make a conclusion for himself. And in this case, that was an endorsement of Donald Trump. Who's to say that he would not have come to that same type of conclusion had he sat down with Kamala Harris? The thing that we can really wonder about that, though, is if she would have been able to come to the table as a real human being. The right-wing media machine prides itself on authenticity. I have to give them credit for that, even where it drives me up the wall sometimes. They are coming because they want authentic people who are expressing their views and are coming to the table as themselves. You may not like themselves, but that's okay. That's what they're offering, and audiences love that. They are craving that in this social media age. So, for example, when you see Trump come to the table with Joe Rogan and he does 3 hours of God knows what he was talking about at some points, and Joe Rogan even pressed back at him and said, I have no idea what you're talking about. He was able to show a lot of what his viewpoint is on the world. Kamala Harris's downfall in a lot of these situations is she just stuck to her stump speech. There was no bleeding outside of the lines of whatever picture she was painting. She had a message and she was sticking to it. And social media viewers don't reward that type of rigidity and type of behavior. And when you zoom out, this reveals one of the left's biggest problems to me, if not the biggest, and I'm pretty comfortable saying that. And forgive me for the Dr. Seuss ass rhyme here. It was completely unintentional. They always react and replicate instead of attack and innovate. They looked at the Joe Rogan phenomenon and decided that that was the thing that shifted this election, and they need to find their own version of that. They don't do the attack ahead of time, pre-planning. It is always defense instead of offense. And the problem with that is that allows your enemy, your opponent, to define who you are. And these right-wing media information spaces on a day after day after day basis said Kamala Harris is an empty vessel. Kamala Harris is weak. Kamala Harris is a radical. Kamala Harris wants to take all of your rights away. And they were the ones who were able to command the definition of who she was on a public stage without the Democrats even knowing that, because they never bothered to enter into those conservative spaces and see what was going on. It is not legitimizing people to go and sit at a table and hear how half of the country gets their news. And it is really a whole other ballgame if you get up on a stage and say, I will be the president for the entirety of this country, while only ever listening and engaging with half of it. That's rich, my friend, literally and figuratively. Let's just do a little thought experiment, though. Let's say Democrats and the left did find a Rogan competitor, and one could say, one being me, that Charlemagne the God is putting himself up for that position pretty clearly. One figure cannot take on an army of conservative, thousands of them, conservative influencers and content creators that they have invested in and developed over time. And it was very clear after this election that the left was going to align with Hollywood over influencers. Hollywood is old news. Streamers are the future. And if they decide that they want to invest in young people as a voter base the way that Donald Trump did, they have to legitimize the creator economy. And you have to provide a viable alternative to the giants of the right that are now aligned with the right, like Joe Rogan. The funniest part of all of this is that in 2028, Democrats could put up a real change candidate, like Bernie Sanders, for instance, and Joe Rogan could sit down with that person and say, absolutely, I'm 100% in your corner. Wouldn't that be funny? What would all of this be for then? There's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to work through together in the aftermath of the 2024 election, so definitely subscribe, throw a like, throw a comment, I'll respond, and I'll see you next time on WTF America.